Record.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so I've clicked record now. So just before we start, Miss Young's going to go through the Year 3 slides and give you all the information. If you have any questions, then please use the chat function. So I'll just check that the participants are allowed to do that. I know sometimes it is, chat function is enabled. So if you have any questions, please post them in the chat and then we'll answer them at the end. So try not to unmute yourself, just so then Miss Young can go through the PowerPoint and share the information. Any questions you have, pop in the chat and we'll answer them at the end. All right, over to you, Miss Young.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so welcome to Year 3, everybody. I'm going to start by talking about, obviously, myself and Mr. Cooper are the go-to people for Year 3. Other than obviously your class teacher. So I'm the head of Year 3 and then Mr. Cooper is the assistant principal. So we're going to start by talking about communication. Communication is actually in Year 3 is exactly the same as it is in Year 2. There's a link here to the Year 3 Padlet if you wanted to have a look at it. It's not yet geared up for you guys. It's still geared up for our current Year 3 parents. So there'll be stuff on there about remote learning and things. But otherwise, it's exactly the same as the Year 2 one. It's on there that you'll find the home learning, spellings, notices, letters, skills boost, and we'll put some things on there for you over the summer, some skills boost activities that you can do with your children. If you sort of don't have time to obviously go to that link there, don't worry, because we will send this out to you. On the subject of communication, I'm sure you've seen this diagram before, just outlining all of the different ways that we can communicate with you at work. So obviously face-to-face, email, phone calls when we need to. We have Instagram and Facebook as our social media. D6, I hope you've all got the D6 app downloaded. If you haven't, then it's a really valuable one because it's where a lot of notices and letters come out. And then obviously the Padlet that we've talked about before. We also do encourage WhatsApp groups. So each class has a class rep who'll set up the WhatsApp group. I'm sure you're familiar with that from Year 2. So I'm sure a question that a lot of you would sort of like to know the answer to is what's different from Year 2 to Year 3. So I'm going to start by talking about what's the same, because there are loads of things that are the same. Obviously we're a through school and we really try to ease the transition and to make the transition as easy as possible. So the lessons are the same, ECAs, home learning, all the setup of those are the same. Curriculum I'll talk about a little bit more in a minute. The timings of the day are still the same, and we do some of the same assessments. So the children are used to doing STAR Reader, STAR Maths, they're used to doing GL assessments, so that's all the same in Year 3. The actual structure of the lessons is the same, so we keep that consistent for the children. So we have a key question at the beginning of the lesson, and then the children are well used then to the Chili Challenge as a way to make sure that they are working at the appropriate challenge level. So lots of similarities. We use the green, yellow and red cards. We move their names down to the different colours as consequences for bad behaviour. So that all really helps to ease the transition for the children. I talked a little bit about curriculum earlier. The lessons are exactly the same as they are in Year 2, in that we have maths, English, science, connected curriculum and social studies, moral education, then you have your 2 lessons of PE, which include swimming, music, French, and then Arabic and Islamic. So this was my timetable from last year, just as an example timetable. So all very similar. So then it brings us on to talk about the differences. So differences are few and small. It's worth noting that children generally find the transition much easier than you think they're going to. I know it's a jump from one key stage to another, but we really do our best to try and make sure that the transition is easy for the children. One of the main differences, and actually something that the children really love, is that they have their lunchtime and their playtime out on the big field at the back of the school, which has got the basketball courts and the football. football pitches, and it's got the different playgrounds. So the children love that element of it. It's also worth mentioning about phonics. So in Key Stage 1, phonics is a huge focus for the children, but you have such a focus on it in Key Stage 1 that by the time they get to Year 3, the majority of the children no longer need standalone phonics sessions. So that's something that gets dropped for those who don't need it anymore. But what I will say is that we do assessments at the beginning of the year, and any children that do still need phonics support, just be reassured that they will still get their phonics support by being taken in groups out of the classroom during English lessons. We do a really nice assessment at the beginning of the year called a Cat 4 assessment. You'll hear more about that next year, but it's actually really nice because it tells you what type of learner your child is. So you'll find out whether they're a spatial learner or a mathematical learner or a visual learner. So it helps us to be able to tailor the learning more specifically to how the children learn best. Uniform is different. I've got a picture of Talia in my class this year displaying the uniform. Again, this is something that the children love, wearing a shirt and tie. It makes them feel a little bit more important. And then independence. I've got a whole slide on independence for the next one, because the biggest change I feel between Year 2 and Year 3 is that we really expect the children to become much more independent and much more responsible. So this includes from their teachers, from parents, from nannies, from drivers. We expect them to be able to organise themselves. Now, obviously, this isn't going to come straight away at the beginning of the year, but by the end of the year, we hope that the children will be packing their own bags, getting themselves dressed, remembering which days PE is on and which days they need to bring in their French homework, starting to be a bit more independent in initiating learning spellings and doing their homework and things. So good news for you guys as parents. We're going to try and make them bit more independent from you. Walking around the school, at the beginning of the year, we do still sort of walk with them around the school, but then as the year goes on, we like to try and trust them a little bit to move between lessons, ready for as they go into older year groups. PE, getting changed. So the children in Year 2 wear their PE kit into school on PE days. In Year 3, that doesn't happen. They wear their school uniform in and they get changed. It's a question that we always get every year, and we always defend the choice to have the children actually get changed for PE. And the reason for that is that actually getting changed for PE is part of a physical education. And so although at the beginning of the year, yes, it does take quite a long time for the children to get changed, after a few weeks, they really get used to it. And it is, at the end of the day, a life skill that will help them, you know, hopefully you'll notice in the mornings they're getting changed a little bit quicker, a bit more independently. When they come home from school, they're a bit more independent with it. So it is a really important thing, although at the beginning of the year, I appreciate that it is a little bit less convenient. Then we want the children to be independent with the home learning. So they choose from the home learning menu, and hopefully they'll be a bit more independent about making sure that they do that. We want them to bring in their reading passport every day and try and remember that. The spelling test will be every week, same as Year 2. And accelerated reader is something that I don't think you'll know about from Year 2. It's not something that we'll do straight away at the beginning of Year 3. So I'll leave that until next year to explain to you. But essentially what it is the children can come in, grab an iPad and test themselves on the book that they've read that week. So we like them to be able to come in and do that a bit independently as well. So just I was thinking about the sorts of things that you would kind of, maybe questions that you might have, and one that always comes up is how can we prepare the children for Year 3? So I've split it into 3 parts. So we've got preparing for Year 3, reading, writing and maths. So I've got reading. I mean, it seems really obvious, but it makes such a massive difference. Just try and read every day, even for just a small amount of time throughout the holidays. And I've put there that it doesn't have to be books. If you're having a day out, it could just be signs and posters or tickets or anything. lists, magazines, non-fiction books as well. There are some children that just really at certain points don't like reading stories, so just a reminder that it can be non-fiction related to something that they enjoy. I've also put down there Read Theory is a website. I'm not sure if you guys are set up with it in year 2, but in year 3 we set up the children with Read Theory accounts. So my teachers are going to make sure that classes are set up on Read Theory as soon as possible. And then I put library visits. Obviously I'm not sure how that's going to work with social distancing, but it's a nice idea to get children engaged with reading and give you something to do for the day. Go and visit the library at the Mall of the Emirates perhaps. Then we've got writing. Now with writing, I would say disguise writing, because I know that it can be quite a laborious task for children. They don't always love writing. But if you want to sort of have a bit of a focus over the summer, writing shopping lists. So you could say, oh Sana, you know, we're going to Carrefour. Could you just quickly note down some things for me? We need bananas, we need this, we need that. And then they're writing and they don't even know they're writing. So it's things like shopping lists, like writing secret notes to each other. Like you could leave a note in the bedroom, and then they could leave a note for you in the kitchen or in the lounge or something. It's just like a way of making it a bit more exciting. So it's not like, right, let's sit down and do some writing. I've got secret diaries, signs, posters. One of my friends did this thing with her daughter last week where they created a music festival in their house, and they created like signs and posters and like persuasive things and tickets and things for the music, this music festival. And she showed me all the pictures. It was really lovely. And again, they don't know that they're writing. Obviously, lots of us live in Dubai. We're away from family, so emails are a really good way to get the children writing, like send emails to grandma and granddad. I've got silly stories. This is something that I used to love doing when I was younger. It's where you start a story and then you fold it down so that they can only see the last line of what you've written. And the last line might say, and then he, and then they have to just carry on the story, but without reading what came before it. And if you keep doing that, keep folding down the paper, and then you open it up at the end, you end up with a really silly story that doesn't make any sense. And then comics I've written, because obviously children love comics and they can write the speech bubbles that are in the comics. I've put here, don't push for extended pieces of writing. Try not for it not to be like, let's sit down and write a story. I know if someone said to me, right, let's sit down and write a story, I'd probably be like, oh gosh. And that's exactly the reaction that you get from the children, isn't it? So I think just try and disguise writing would be my best piece of advice for sort of preparing for year 3. And a bit of a controversial one, I wouldn't correct their errors either when they're writing. Just because if you do a piece of writing and you show somebody and the first thing they say is, oh, that's great, but look, this is actually spelt this way, not that way, it can just be really demoralizing. So I wouldn't correct the errors. There are ways that you can correct errors, like say if you were writing notes to each other and there was a spelling that was wrong in the note that you write back, you can write the spelling correctly. But yeah, that would be my advice with regard to writing. And then there's a website at the bottom called Pobble 365. That's got lots of different ideas for like stimulants for writing, inspirational sort of ideas for writing. And so then that leads us on to maths. Again, disguise the maths, everyday problems like going to the supermarket and working with money. Numbers on doors is something that I always used to tell my parents to do when I was back in the UK. I don't know if it's not quite so relevant here, but obviously in the UK you can walk down the street and you've got door numbers going down the road, and it's like odd on one side, even on the other, so that's like a good thing to notice. And then it counts in 2s, so then you can then say, look at the yellow house up there, what number is that going to be? Can you work out what it is? I don't know, you might be able to do that in a villa complex perhaps. Time is a massive one. We're currently teaching time in year 3 now, and it's such a difficult concept to teach. So as much as you can like feed time into everyday life, it really, really helps the children to get their head around it. Calendar, days of the week, what day is it tomorrow, what day was it yesterday, it's the 13th today, so what date will it be in 1 week's time? Just things like that, just weaving into everyday life. Looking for different shapes in the environment. If you go for a walk, first one to spot a hexagon, like, you know, things like that. Cooking is really useful for capacity, measuring capacity and mass, and just counting in 2s, counting in 3s, 5s, 10s, 100s. And then I've put every now and again at the bottom, because I've given you some websites here. Daily 10 is good for mental maths, ICT games. Then the children have got logins for Times Table, Rockstars and Numbots. So that gives you some ideas for over the holidays. Obviously, don't have a holiday, have fun, but if you wanted to also get in a bit of learning, that's some ideas for you. Now our topics in year 3, so we're doing the top 2 are definite topics that we'll be doing next year. So we've got volcanoes and earthquakes, which is, I love this topic and the children love it as well. I think we're going to end up doing that one first next year. We did it last this year, but it's a really, really cool topic, so they can look forward to that. We have to do Stone Age to Iron Age in year 3, which is another really interesting topic. We also do an ancient civilization. Historically, we've done ancient Egypt, but that might change next year. We might do the Shang dynasty of China, perhaps. We have one topic which is plant-based, because plants are a huge objective for us to tick off in terms of science. We usually do that by thinking about our topic is the rainforest. But I think this year we might make it more of a focus on indigenous people rather than rainforest. And then our last topic is to be confirmed. We usually make it a literacy-based topic. And we've done Leon and the Place Between before, which is where this picture came from. But I think, again, we're going to change that one. We'll have to like keep it a bit fresh, especially for the teachers as well, so that we're not teaching the same topics every year. The one thing that I would say, though, I've talked a lot about things that you can do to prepare for year 3. The one thing I would say is don't do any sort of pre-teaching or pre-learning around these topics, because sometimes you get children come in at the beginning of the year and they say, I know our first topic is this and I know everything about volcanoes and earthquakes. And in my mind, I just think, oh no, because now that learning for that child is not going to be as exciting and interesting, because it's not new learning for them. So I'd say don't go near the topics, but just perhaps focus on the basics if you wanted to do anything over the holidays. And that's it. Time for questions. I don't know how to, I'm going to stop my sharing here. Have you been...
your questions in the chat, and then we'll do our best to answer them where possible. So any questions you have, pop it in the chat, post it, and we will do our best to answer them for you.
Is there anything that I missed, Mr. Cooper?
No, I think we covered it all well. I think really this meeting is just focused on giving people a taste of what to expect in year 3, which is more of the same, with a few subtle progressions. And I think, it's just preparing things like the PE kits and this type of thing and getting changed is one of those things that they're trying to find more difficult, because obviously it's a new thing and it's a new skill. It's an important skill. And if there's anything that you can do over the holidays to support the children in preparing for that, it's practicing, getting ready. You can make it fun, time them to change into the PE kit, time them to change them back out, see if they can beat their previous time, just so that they're fully prepped for next year. Little small things like making sure the children have their names in their clothes and this type of thing, because obviously inevitably children will, drop their tie and the tie falls off when they're running outside. But if their name is on it, then it will come back to them through the lost property. And if it's got their name in class, it will certainly come back to their classroom. So Yeah, it's all those little things really I think right now are really important. And then in September we always have our meet the team, so you'll get to meet the individual teachers and ask a bit more about their learning and how you can support them throughout the year. This is more about getting ready for each year group and how to prep over the summer and what to expect in September. Any questions? I've not got any questions as of yet.
Can I just put out there that I think it would be quite a good time to mention it, is that we really like rucksacks that can fit in the cubbies. So usually by the beginning of the year, when I talk to parents about uniform and rucksacks, it's too late because they've already bought them. But some children come in with these massive big suitcases that then can't fit in the lockers, and then we have to sort of find a place for them, and it becomes a bit of a kind of health and safety hazard if you have too many of them. So just a plea from me to buy
big bags.
Yeah. A couple of questions.
So we've got one from, so for the kids who are new to the school, how is that onboarding process? Yeah, absolutely. So the first day of school is always the new student day, a special day for new students and parents to come and meet their class teacher in a smaller environment, because obviously less children will be in. And the children get to meet the teacher, so there'll be maybe 3 or 4 new students in that class, so they'll get a really personalised experience for that day. And throughout that day, you'll also be shared various parent workshops that you can attend to find out more about the curriculum, about the school, the way we work. You get to meet the team, including me, the vice principal, Miss Isaac, the primary principal, and Mr. Matthews, the CEO of the school. And so it gives you an opportunity to really set yourself up well for the year and find out as much information as possible. So that all that information will be shared with you over the summer when we've got final details. And that's always a really successful day for the new students and indeed the new parents. It's a great opportunity to meet other new parents as well and make a few friendships along the way. It will be home learning or at school. Rehan, I'm not sure what you're referring to. What do you mean in terms
I know what they mean. Will we be distance learning still in September, or will we be in school?
Ultimately, obviously, as teachers and vice principal, we're still waiting for details from the KHDA. And until then, until KHDA have confirmed exactly what September is going to look like, we obviously have exactly the same information. When we know, you'll be sure that you will know as well, because I'm sure KHDA will announce it to everybody, not just schools. And so parents will be made aware by KHDA just as much as the schools. But as soon as we know, we'll obviously share our details with you. One thing that I want to say is, obviously, even though we don't know what's happening yet, we are making plans for every single option that we perceive to be, what might happen in September. So we are making sure that we've got all plans in place to make sure that whatever school looks like in September, it will be a really successful start to the year. We hope to be in school. Obviously, that's where we want to be. We want all our children to be in school and in classes. But obviously, it's really important we take into account children's safety, etc. So we'll wait for KHDA to give us that information. And as soon as we have that information, we will, of course, share that with you. Okay? First day will be a regular day till 3 p.m. Yeah, for all our students, the days will always be normal, up to 3 p.m. The new student day is usually a little bit shorter, just to give, because there's a small amount of children, it's usually about a half day. But all those details will be shared with you in the summer, so that you're fully prepared and aware of what the timings and timetables will look like for September. Any other questions? Thank you, Amira.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so if you have any more questions, then feel free to stay on to the meeting. If not, then that's the end. If you think of a question in 10 minutes' time, then please feel free to email me or Miss Young, and we'll be happy to answer them. But yeah, if we don't see you before the summer holidays, have a wonderful summer break. Make sure you get some time to yourselves as a family. Stay safe, and we'll look forward to seeing you in whatever format, but hopefully in school in September. And certainly the way things are starting to open up in Dubai is pointing towards us hopefully having some form of normality in September. So we're very excited about the prospects of that. Anything else, Miss Young?
No, I think that's all. Thank you very much for coming, everybody.
Okay, so feel free to leave the meeting now. We'll stay for another couple of minutes just to check whether anyone has a question to ask, and then we'll end the meeting. Pop it in the chat if you do.